Looking back at the preliminary task, I felt as though we achieved a reasonably good piece of footage that adhered to all the rules necessary, but also had a good level of creativity within it, e.g. with the storyline and the different camera angles and shots we used, such as the high-angle shot and a selection of close-ups. Our editing in terms of using a variety of different shots in the final cut, as well as creating a sound bridge, went well too, and in doing so, I felt as though I managed to learn a great deal more about how the editing process works. We managed to transfer the majority of these skills through to the main task, however not all of them were applicable as such. For example, a shot-reverse shot sequence was not present in the main task as dialogue did not feature within our film. However, we did pay attention to making sure we did not make a continuity error, although we almost did have one when we had to reshoot a few pieces of footage with a different actor than we had originally used. Thankfully, due to our editing skills, we managed to still use the shots and adhere to the... As with the preliminary task, the framing of a few of our shots has been slightly off, which is a shame. However, we had to keep them to ensure our story flowed well. Here is a screenshot of our least favourite shot. The particular shot is our least favourite for a number of reasons, such as the framing. We hate that you can see a slight slither of the yellow wall coming into the shot from the bottom due to location issues. We could not film this in any other way. Another reason why we dislike this shot so much is that the colours are washed out and flat, which unfortunately could not be remedied with the use of colour correction on Adobe Premiere Pro, despite multiple attempts. However, aside from this shot, the majority of our composition are a lot more pleasing to the eye. Here are some screenshots of my favourites. I personally believe that we followed our pre-production documentation more in the main task than we did in the preliminary task. However, I personally would have liked it if we had followed them more closely, as I think it would have made the filming process much faster and more efficient. However, having said that, I do still think we managed to get some good creative shots, but similarly to when doing the preliminary task, we should have focused on getting the basic rules down to a T before injecting some creativity into our shots, as that would have brought them up to a higher standard. One of the weaknesses that occurred in both the preliminary task as well as the main task has been the issue of time management and organisation. While these aspects were much clearer during the main task, they still were not managed as well as they could have been, and if we had done so, I believe we would have been much more efficient with our filming, which could have resulted in a better product. A large part of this problem of the main task was due to the editing software crashing on multiple occasions and then taking approximately 30 minutes to load each time we opened our project, which was unfortunately out of our hands. Another issue that occurred during the preliminary and the main task was to do with teamwork. While we took time to allocate roles fairly and equally, due to other commitments from other team members and time issues, these were juggled around, meaning that some had less or more work to do than others. We have been able to work through this issue and complete our project, however it has definitely made it much more difficult to complete. On the reverse side of these factors, many things from the preliminary task to the main task have gone well, the main one for me being our development on the mise-en-scène aspects of filming. While we did have some nice little props and an okay location for the preliminary task, I feel that the main task looked much better. We went to a lot of effort to source the right costumes, props, locations, and use some lighting where we could, which all tied in together to create some really nice atmospheric shots, something that the preliminary task was lacking in. These aspects were also reinforced when we did some colour correction using Adobe Premiere Pro, which is something we learned after doing the preliminary task. Another positive factor that we developed was our creativity when it came to different angles and shots, where we were much more adventurous than we were for the preliminary task. Here are some screenshots to illustrate the kind of creativity we included with our work. Lastly, I think the way we talked through issues together as a group developed from when we first started with the preliminary task, and we made some good group decisions because of this, the main one being altering our idea greatly after discussing some issues we had found with it. This was then documented by the group vlog we did. In conclusion, I would say that the biggest factors I have learnt and developed from the preliminary task through to the main task are to become more creative with the camera work while taking time to consider the basic rules such as framing and composition, how to edit in a productive way and convey continuity through editing, to follow pre-production documentation, and to make sure we stick to allocated roles within our group.